It's time to get educated on the craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. This is the Dr. Duke Show.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Duke Show. We've got a great program for you today, so please hit that share button and let's get educated. Today's show is sponsored by Mike Lindell and our friends at MyPillow. This week, MyPillow is offering their men's and women's sleep and loungewear for 50% off. Sure looks awfully comfortable for all those cold winter nights. Simply use the code Dr. Duke, that's D-R-D-U-K-E, and you can save up to 66% on other items when you visit MyPillow, besides getting BOGO on the nightwear. Today we start in the mitten of the Midwest, known as Michigan, where Democrats are openly telling public school parents that they need to shut up and let government schools teach whatever they want. Yes, from the land of Michael Moore, who's too busy bowling with idiots to do documentaries on the failed school systems, we now know that the Michigan Democrat Party took an elitist shot at parents of children who attend public schools. Essentially, the Post told tax-paying parents to mind their own business and let the state teach your kids whatever they think they should learn. And there's Gretchen Whitmer, who's at the core of all of this. The queen of the vaccine mandates. Now the Democrats in Michigan are basically telling parents, despite all the money, all the property taxes, and all sorts of other forms of revenue taken directly from you and applied to the school, you, mom and dad, are the one and only group that are not allowed to have a say. Planned Parenthood? All right if they meddle with the public schools. Radical abortion groups? Absolutely. Critical race theory peddling hucksters? Absolutely welcome in Michigan schools. Critical race theory, people who have undermined the curriculum, absolutely, bring them on in. Wacko environmentalists bringing in curriculum to talk about how evil the world is being treated by human beings. They're welcome too. Just, not you, mom and dad.
So the official Twitter account of the Michigan Democratic Party, whoever's in charge of that, an intern, or just, honestly, it's probably anyone within that organization, because what they did, again, is be dumb and say the quiet part out loud, and they did it on the official Twitter page. And so they put up a post, maybe, Saturday night, no one's paying attention, except people were paying attention, and this is what it said. Not sure where this parents should control what is taught in schools because they are our kids is originating. Just that right there should tell you everything you need to know. But they continued. But parents do have the option to send their kids to a hand-selected private school at their own expense if this is what they desire. Again, I'm going to pause so you can think about what they just said.
So either, okay. Is it a binary? Is this what we call a binary, Katie?
That doesn't exist.
The binary is,
binaries don't exist.
You either do what we tell you when we tell you, or go to a private school. Now, we've been telling parents to do that for how many years here?
Too many.
Well,
they continued in that post that they posted. The purpose of a public education, ooh goody, they're going to tell us, in a public school, so the purpose of a public education in a public school, not a public education in a private school, okay, is not to teach kids what parents only want them to be taught. It is to teach them what society needs them to know. The client, because it's a business, of the public school is not the parent, but the entire community. The public, but doesn't that include the parents?
A couple questions for you, Katie.
Just a few.
When are parents not considered society?
Well, that's in Michigan. It's not.
Michigan, okay.
So that's the post that was put up, and wow, I can't believe they got any flack from it. That anyone paid attention on a Saturday night when the official Michigan Democratic Party Twitter account decided to put that out. But alas, at least one person paid attention because then they had to delete said tweet, and mea culpa. So then they wrote, we have deleted a post that ignored the important role parents play and should play in Michigan public schools. Parents need to have a say in their children's education. End of story. Except it wasn't. The post does not reflect the views of Michigan Democrats and should not be misinterpreted as a statement of support from our elected officials or candidates. Well, then, if it's the official, actual belief of someone who decided to put that up.
Well, maybe it was society who made the statement.
The original statement?
Yeah, maybe it was society, not Democrat individuals. But we know there's a difference,
but society is the client, the official client.
If you're using the word client when you're talking about American public schools,
exactly,
you are already in a whole great big world of hurt.
This is true.
This is completely, utterly, and totally predictable. And I like what you said at the beginning of your introduction there, Katie, that there's what's said and that what shouldn't be said. And it's amazing how over the last 20 years, Democrat, and particularly over the last 5 years, how Democrat politicians are now willing to say that which they used to keep quiet, right? And this is one of those things. This is how they've always viewed you, Mom and Dad. This isn't new. This isn't because Donald Trump is such an evil man. It's not because you got particularly evil Democrats in power. This is what the Democrat Party has believed about schooling for a long time. Why do you think it is? Why do you think it is that it is almost exclusively radical left-wing Democrats who want your kids in the public schools no matter what? Do you think it has anything to do with the fact that the schools are failed, that the schools have demonstrated clearly that they're able to do none of what they're supposed to do, that they can't teach your kids for reading, writing, and literacy, that they can't get your kids really prepared for college? Why do you think the radical Democrats want your kids in public schools, even though they refuse to teach them anything? And the answer is control. That's all this is. It's all it's ever been. And you know how you know we're telling you the truth? Because look at every other aspect of government where Democrats are having these incredibly... Why are the Democrats standing by Biden? Even though now a lot of them are starting to say what you and I are thinking, that the guy is a clown show. Because of power and control. That's the only reason.
Are you a fan of the show? Consider joining the Patriot Club. Your tax-deductible donation of $99 a year keeps us going. Simply visit patriotclub.us. That's patriotclub.us to pledge your support and receive our signature tumbler as a token of our appreciation. We've got much more to come. Stay with us.
PSA time, public service announcement. If you sleep with a subordinate, you may actually get fired. If of being president, but of a university, not president of other places. All right, so we have Mark S. Schlissel at the University of Michigan, or we had Mark S. Schlissel at the University of Michigan because they fired Mark S. Schlissel. I just like saying that
it's
name.
It's a Snoop
Schlissel.
Dogg name for shizzle.
For shizzle.
For shizzle.
Well, Marky Mark
for
here
shizzle got fired.
Was fired effective immediately from the University of Michigan for having a relationship with a subordinate that the university's Board of Regents said actually violated the university policy. I can't believe it actually was written in their policy. And it was carried out in a manner inconsistent with the dignity and reputation of the university. That's what they said. So the board ordered that Schlissel return all of his university property. They canceled an agreement. It would have continued to pay him his base salary of $927,000.
Wow.
For 2 years after his contract was supposed to end in 2023. So that relationship that he engaged in cost him in the pocketbook. But, you know, I'm not going to read you any of the emails that he sent to said subordinate, and we'll just know that he sounded pretty desperate.
Well, they were more cringeworthy than sexy, right? It's not like he was using nasty words.
I still am not going to read them.
But they was really... Take a look again at our friend here, Fashizzle. And, you know, the thing about Fashizzle is, does he not look a little bit like Harvey Weinstein? I think he does. Anyway, not that that matters. The idea here that you have got the hypocrisy of this. I have said and maintained for a long time that a lot of this political correctness, all of this absolute, on the one hand, there should be no boundaries for anybody with sexual behavior whatsoever, except, of course, when you get yourself caught in doing something like this, where you're the chancellor of the university and you're flirting with an employee. You would think the Democrats would support this, like they support every other sexual picadillo, but they don't, and that's good because we get rid of people like Fashizzle that way. Just another radical left-wing bureaucrat. But you go back and step back for a little bit here. I've said and maintained for a long time, really do believe this is true, that all this political correctness is usually nothing more than a ploy to keep very liberal white people in their jobs. So you could be how do you get to be the chancellor of University of Michigan in a world where critical race theory was born? Well, being white's not helpful. So what you do is you sell out all other white people, right? You subscribe to the most radical anti-white policies, so you're seen as a safe white guy. And then, of course, there you go. You put him in his office. And if this is the only way we got to get rid of these white liberals, then I guess we ought to keep charging them down.
All right, so Mary Sue Coleman, who is the former president of the university, will become the interim president for now. And the whole story unfolded. I mean, this has been going on for a little while now. But the board actually had received an anonymous complaint back in December saying that Dr. Schlissel, who, of course, is married and has 4 kids, had been involved in an inappropriate sexual affair with a subordinate. And the letter that was sent to Schlissel actually said there can be no question, this is from the board, to Schlissel, that you were acutely aware that any inappropriate conduct or communication between you and a subordinate would cause substantial harm to the dignity and reputation of the University of Michigan. Now, doing the investigation, they found that, he had sent dozens of emails, again, I'm not going to read them because they're just pathetic, to the employee from his university account. So when you actually send emails using an official account, man, I'm just making a lot of references to one specific family today in this story, if you know what I'm talking about.
Did he have a server in his locker room?
I can confirm nor deny that has happened. Now, they actually had this employee, the university account, it's been several years of actual contact with subordinate. And so the board actually posted 118 pages of those messages. And so if you're really bored in life and want to go track those down, you can. They got put on the university website in the interest, they say, of full disclosure, because University of Michigan is always about full disclosure.
Hail to the victors.
Yes. Now, the emails, they say, use inappropriate tone and inappropriate language. And the letter from the Board of Regents actually said and showed that Dr. Schlissel had used official business to carry out the relationship. And so they viewed that conduct as being particularly egregious because he had taken a public position. Oh, University of Michigan, the truth's coming out. I thought they didn't stand for this, but they stand for it. He had taken a public position about sexual harassment. Oh, whoops. So do as I say, not as I clearly do. And that was all the way back in a whopping 2020. So maybe it just, within that time, his views have changed, although this relationship was going on for several years, and now we're just into 2022 right now. So 2020 wasn't that long ago.
Well, blame it on the left, because who came up with the idea, the left, right, that any completely complicit in any relationship with a subordinate, even if he or she, the subordinate, is happy-go-lucky and thrilled with the attention, that's an abuse of power, right? Ordinarily, this is what the Bill Clinton administration told us.
We're not mentioning
complicit
any family
This
names today.
This is just a man, between a man and an intern, right? I mean, he didn't get fired from his job for it, but then again, he was not the chancellor of a prestigious university like Michigan. Oh, and by the way, Mary Sue Coleman, who is replacing the Schlissel, don't remember, in case you don't remember, she's the former chancellor who used to get all liquored up and drunk on Saturdays and say really egregiously stupid things, so much so that they had to ask her to step down. So you go from a lech to a drunk, to a lech to a drunk, to a drunk to a lech. And so Michigan, there's either a real lack of talent there, which makes me suspicious because, I mean, after all, you still got, her as the governor. So I'm beginning to suspect that there may be a tremendous lack of political acumen in the state of Michigan. If you got Gretchen as the governor of the state, and you got Schlissel, and right behind Schlissel you got Coleman. So this is a real brain trust.
Well, I just want to point out that the New York Times, in their version of this story, included this statement, and I think it just kind of sums up what we have happening here at the university level. Allegations of sexual misconduct in academia are not rare. Oh, that's great. But they more commonly involve students and professors, not university presidents. Like, wow, I am shocked. I can't believe it's actually a university president, not just another example of subordination and insubordination with the professors and the students and taking advantage and all that. I can't believe it.
Today's show is sponsored by Clean Start Hand Sanitizer. For an odor-free foam hand sanitizer that lasts 2 hours and provides 19 refills, visit freedomproject.com/clean. That's KLEEN to order yours today.
well, the University of Michigan, we're just going to stay right in the same state and then at the same university, because why would we have to go anywhere else to find an insane story about education that's not actually about education, because it's about sexual misconduct. It seems to be that's what Michigan's all about right now. They will be paying mucho bucks now to more than 1,000 victims. And yet, just another example, because as the New York Times said, we usually have this sexual relationships with professors and students. That's not rare. But how about the doctor of the university, or a doctor on the university, especially who is involved with athletes? And you're saying, well, that's an old story. No, it's another news story, because it just keeps happening. We have another example, as I said, of sexual abuse, and it's at the hands of a former doctor at the university. There he is, Dr. Robert E. Anderson. They couldn't find a newer photo because, well, now he's deceased, but he had worked there since 1968. So from 1968 until 2003. Do you know how many students he probably saw? In more ways than one. And what they found at the University of Michigan is that they're going to have to pay the mucho bucks in the form of $490 million, to the tune of, and that's not even the highest we've had, because remember Larry Nassar just a couple years ago?
And that was Michigan State.
There you go.
University.
So again, we're just staying in the same state of Michigan. Well, here's what happened. Dr. Robert E. Anderson, who died back in 2008, it was concluded, they found out last year that a law firm was hired by the university. They found, yes, he did engage in sexual misconduct with patients on countless occasions. The conclusion came more than 3 years, they say, after a former student wrestler wrote to Michigan's athletic director and reported the misconduct back from the 1970s. Again, he was there for a really long time and saw many students. So even though it's more than 1,000, which that's just insane to think about, it could be even more than that. So the university started investigating, and then more than 100 reports actually came available within 2 weeks. So it wasn't even difficult to find the truth, but yet they didn't have the truth until now.
So I want to know why universities aren't susceptible to their own cancel culture initiatives, right? It's clear that across the state of Michigan, you have universities, particularly the main two, Michigan and Michigan State, that are engaging in endless scandals with regards to sexual abuse. We saw what happened to Schlissel at Michigan. Now, on top of that, Michigan is going to be paying out almost $500 million to settle various cases over a number of years, and that's nothing. That completely is dwarfed by what happened at Michigan State and that one particularly nasty Dr. Nassar, who was doing all those bad things to our Olympic team gymnasts, right? Going on for a number of years. So, but if this is the case, if there is this kind of rabid corruption in the collegiate academic field, if all across the country there's nothing going on but high-level sexual abuse, isn't that enough to get the universities canceled, or at least get the left-wing progressives who have owned the universities for about 60 years, whose policies completely and utterly guide how the universities conduct themselves? Maybe it's time to remove the ideological stranglehold of progressivism on colleges and universities. Free that up in the name of cancel culture. Cancel progressivism, because clearly it's a sexual cancer on college and universities.
Now, looking at this story, the former wrestler student who came forth, eventually a bunch of others, had made claim that Anderson had molested them during physical examinations, and they say many of the exams were done because of student athletes. So student athletes have to get checked out to make sure everything is good. And the investigators found that Anderson would perform examinations that were wholly unnecessary and improper. And once they say, or for instance, I guess they give an example, was a pelvic exam being needed for a woman who complained that she had a sore throat. Now, I've always made the joke, and I know a lot of people I know made the joke that, oh, if you're in college and you get sick, say you have a cold, back when we actually still had colds and the flu, and you go to the on-campus doctors, they're going to say you have an STD. Like, I always made that joke because everyone I know who's like, oh, I have a cold or something, they were, well, you may have an STD. Like, that's exactly the prognosis you were given. But in this case, he's actually doing physical exams for his own reasons, as we can see, wholly unnecessary. And what's crazy about this is, and we won't get into too much the details, but Matt Schembechler, is that how I college
Bo
football.
Schembechler,
College
yes.
football. Okay, so Matt is the son of Bo Schembechler, who was, if you're a Michigan fan, you know who this coach is. Matt says he was one of the victims, and his dad turned the other way, and all this insanity that's happening. Now, we can't corroborate Matt's story, but he's claiming to be a victim as well. And so who knows how many people were actually included in this.
My final word on this, when turn your head and cough becomes slap and tickle, it's pure Michigan. It's time for some real education. I thought that we had an interesting thing happen in the country. We had the CNN little clown show, George Costanza. Brian Stelter is his name. Visit a Washington, D.C. school to find out that these kids were learning about how to spot informational lies in the news, right? How do you find fake news in the public school? So these are kids who can't do math at a very good level. They're middle high school kids who don't know how to read and write very well, but they're being taught by their liberal teachers how to spot bad information in the news, which is ironic when you stop and think about this is a guy from CNN asking them what they're learning. And one of the things we learned that the kids told Stelter was, hey, we learned that satire was a form of misinformation. One of the great literary genres of Western culture, satire, was labeled as fake information. This is one more way they want to come after sites like the Babylon Bee, right? Liberals are so literal, progressives are so one-minded when it comes to their politics that they see satire, which is a really legitimate form of art, as lying. Because usually satire is exposing the goofy things that the left are doing. So I thought this week we would take a famous piece of satire from history and talk about it as a way of trying to get the idea out there that satire is a hallmark of a healthy culture. The more you have freedom for artists and writers and poets to satirize the mores of the day, the more you have light shining into the darkness. And so we're going to go back perhaps to the most famous satire in Western history. It is a modest proposal by the great Jonathan Swift, Irish writer, Irish dean of St. Paul's Cathedral, a remarkable thinker, and a noted cynic. So when we think about this for a second, what is a modest proposal? It's a Juvenalian satire. It's one of the great satirical works of Western culture. And what it does is it deals with the British's treatment of the Irish. At this time, the Brits had a stranglehold on Irish nationalism, and what was happening is that you had all of these children, these Irish kids who had lost family in the wars, who had lost fathers to warfare, particularly against the Brits. You had all of these starving children in the streets of Ireland, and nobody really to look after them. There was a mess, sociological mess going on. And so Swift, who was Irish himself, said, how do we call attention to this? And what he wanted to do is he wanted to write a satire. And so take a look at this quote. In order to make his satire work, and the satirical premise was this: if we really don't care about Irish babies, maybe we can make use of them. What if we take Irish babies and sell them as food? Let them eat, plump them up until they're about 10, 12, 15 pounds, then sell them. And think about how many homeless people, think about how many starving people would be fed by these Irish babies. And it would be a useful thing because it gets rid of all the starving Irish babies. And so in order to write this kind of outrageous satire, he has to be very, very tongue-in-cheek, very, very good about making you believe that he believes this is the answer. So we'll just read the first part of this to give you how even he plays this. He writes, "It is a melancholy object to those who walk through this great town or travel in the country when they see the streets, the roads, the cabin doors crowded with beggars." Starts with an obvious truth. Some persons of a desponding spirit are in great concern that vast numbers of poor people who are aged, diseased, or maimed, and I have been desired to employ my thoughts to what course may be taken. Here's a problem. It's a real problem. How do we fix it? I'm serious, guys. I want to come up with a good example. And then you get this. "But as to myself, having been wearied out for many years with offering vain, idle, visionary thoughts, and at length utterly despairing of success, how we handle with this crisis, I fortunately fell upon this modest proposal, which, as I says, it is wholly new. It is something solid and real. So he's setting up his argument, which we'll look at later in the week, with this really remarkable gambit. You don't deny we have a problem, do you? Number one. Number two, it's a horrible problem without a solution, right? Right. And so that means we've got to come up with new ways of handling the situation, correct? Correct. So we're going to learn about my modest proposal in the satire. And if you get that far with him, he's dead serious. At least he makes you believe he's dead serious. It's going to be amazing how many readers since the time of Swift have taken him actually seriously. It's one more reason satire does matter as a literary genre.
All right, before we go, let's show some love to our Patriot Club members. And today, the shout out is going to Kathy from Boulder, Colorado. Kathy, thank you for supporting us. And that, I guess, is going to wrap up this show for Freedom Project. I'm Katie. He's Dr. Duke.
Till next time, stay educated.